Hello everyone. Hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to another great episode of Breaking Bread with Corey. I am your host, and thank you so much for joining me today. We have a great show for you. I've been very fortunate enough to have some amazing women in my lineup. Hello. Thank you for joining. I've just been very fortunate to have some amazing women ambassadors to this industry. And this is something that is a continuous thing that I believe that we should celebrate and support. We need to keep on doing our work. Let me see if I can get, I don't know if that background is coming in hot. Hello. Thank you for joining. Yeah, such an amazing array of women that have so much talent to offer into this industry, and I just feel like being in this industry as long as I have, not having this knowledge of what is truly out there. And this is something that has been lacking, and I hope I could continue to support. We all need to support the ladies out there. We need to support diversity in the industry. It's important. It's vital right now. And I'm so excited. Let's see. Can somebody let me know if you could hear me clearly? I just want to make sure everything sounds great. Anybody comment there that you could hear me? Let me see if I got the earphones in well. Let me see. Could everybody hear me correctly? Could you hear me good? Anybody mark it down? Yeah, we can hear you. Perfect. Thank you. Before we get started, I just want to highlight what I'm drinking tonight. What I'll be sharing with our special guest, Miranda Elliot, from Elliot Wine School. I'm going to have a little Chiabre. This is a natural and vegan wine that the lovely Francis Gonzalez from My Vegan Wines sent me, and absolutely delicious from the Conchagua Costa Valley of Chile, and absolutely delicious. For those of you that don't know Frances, you must check her out on her page and what she does. She's a huge distributor of vegan and natural wines. And like I said, it's been an honor to sit with all these ladies, including Miranda, in just a few moments. But go ahead and please, if you don't already, please go ahead and follow these ladies. Follow Miranda and support her school, her Elliot Wine School. And I'm so excited to learn more about it. I hate to use this word with ladies because my dad would slap me. He always taught me to be proper. But I am in the company of a wine stud when I see what she has, her resume, what she has to offer. And I'm so excited to share the screen with her today. And hopefully you are excited too. And thank you for joining me and supporting my vision and bringing this whole thing to life as far as supporting the minority industry in the wine and beer and spirits world. So without further ado, let me see if I can bring Miranda on. There you are. See if I can get her on.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm just trying to clear my screen real quick. There we go. Trying to fix it. It's kind of weird. There you go. I can see the trees in the background. There you go. I'm out in my veranda. I call it my little veranda where I sit and enjoy my wine.
Nice. Very nice. Veranda is like the only word that rhymes with Miranda, so I appreciate that.
Perfect. That was what I was going for. I was going for that little poetic thing.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm good. How's everything with you?
Pretty good. A little chaotic, but that's a a normal thing, I guess, for a parent with a 3-year-old. You know, things always
Oh
get
yeah.
kind of chaotic. But yeah, everything is good. You know, we're enjoying some really nice weather out in the Pacific Northwest, so that's why I'm sitting out and doing the show from outside. Hopefully I can do some more. We have some great weather. How's the weather where you're at?
It's actually really nice. I mean, it's kind of chilly. It's like in the 30s here. I'm in Chicago. So
Mm,
it's a little bit chilly, but it's also really nice and sunny. So yeah.
very nice, very nice. And that's the thing that's really interesting with connecting with everybody is scheduling things, and then I hear, oh, what is your time zone? And then I start thinking, okay, where are you at? Where? But thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing your time. I'm
Absolutely.
so excited to get things going. So, for all the viewers that are joining us out there, introduce yourself. Tell them who you are.
Cool. So yeah, my name's Miranda Elliot. My pronouns are she, her. I am the owner and founder of Elliot Wine School, which I launched in November. Well, I guess the first event was in November. So basically, I do sort of my own classes that I've developed myself, some community building events. So I do an LGBTQ wine brunch, which is basically kind of a virtual gathering for LGBTQ wine professionals or any LGBTQ people interested in joining the wine industry as well. I just did an event yesterday called Interrogating Professionalism in the Wine Industry. So just talking about what are some like professional standards that, may be sort of exclusive. So things like dress code or just various kind of things, and also double standards for double standards for that aren't always applied equally to maybe cis straight white men. And then so in addition to my classes, I also have I offer WSET classes now. So I have level 1 and 2 in wines, level 1 and 2 in spirits, and level 1 in sake. And then in addition, I partner with the Sake Sommelier Association to offer their classes too. So yeah, busy. Things are good.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, that's awesome. You do the sake, the certification, and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
classes. I was like, this is awesome. I mean, that is the thing that I always see. Like, even for me, I I was in and out, and I got more informal education than I had formal education, and because time and finances and things like that. But what you are providing with your school is pretty amazing. I mean, it's pretty in depth. I mean, going on your site and seeing from things from special events to the classes that you hold, you're very well rounded. You attack it from all ends, and that's the one thing that I really appreciate. And I just got to tell you, you're one of the first ambassadors that I connected with when I first started getting things ready to do the breaking bread. And it was it was like eye opening and refreshing to hear your side and your conversation. Um, and it's beautiful what you do.
thank
So
you.
my hat,
It means
if
a
I
lot.
was wearing a hat, I would be giving my hat off to you doing such a wonderful job
Well,
for
thank you. Yeah,
everybody
it
out
means a
there.
lot.
Yeah, yeah. Um, tell us how you all got how you got started. What got you started? What was your inspiration to get started and just wine in general, and then what kicked it all off into getting everything going as far as your school and so forth.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I grew up here in Chicago. I grew up going to restaurants with my dad and my sister. So, like, food has always been super important, especially like sharing food with my family or, loved ones. And so I didn't really necessarily intend to go into the restaurant industry, but I graduated from college with a degree in classics, so I read Latin for 4 years, and I didn't really
very
want to
nice,
keep
very
going in
nice.
academia. And so I was just thinking, like, what do I really love to do? And it's, restaurants and it's food. So wine kind of came a little bit later, but that was sort of the entry point for me. And then, wine has been sort of that same idea of, sharing it with other people and having it be sort of
Right,
this community and collaborative kind of thing. So that's always been sort of
right.
like my motivation. So
Yeah.
I worked in restaurants for about 6.5 years. So I worked at a few places here in Chicago. I worked at Moto Restaurant, which was like molecular gastronomy tasting menu. I worked at Le Nomade, which is like fine dining French. A few different places, steakhouses. And then I worked in sales. So I worked in distribution, did some education, and then unfortunately was laid off due to COVID. So it just kind of gave me the opportunity to really think about, what did I want to do next, and what did I want kind of my impact to be in the wine industry. And education is what I've always wanted to do. So I just kind of decided, like, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to launch my own school, and just try to do the kind of things that some of the kind of classes and events that I wish that I had seen when I first started. Community building events like for LGBTQ wine professionals, things like that. And then also offering WSET classes too, and the Sake Sommelier Association too. So just all of these
Yeah.
things that kind of round it all out.
Was any part of the was there any part of the restaurant work that you did? Was there anything that was a particular area where you worked that inspired you more? That you just saw like, oh man, I want to do this. Like the cuisine. I love you're talking about sitting around and how wine is kind of like this gathering thing. Was there a particular place that you just thought? I always use the word romantic, like when you have that romantic setting of just the food, the elements, the ambiance, everything was that was just like that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is just kind of, the memories I have from when I was a kid. My dad's really into restaurants, so he would take us to all these like, really incredible restaurants here, some of which don't exist anymore, but it's like that kind of thing. And then working in restaurants myself, I think what I really loved, when I was at Moto Restaurant, the kitchen staff would sort of cycle into the front of house. And so, you had a lot of like interaction between front of house and back of house. And I would do wine classes that had, front of house and back of house there. And that was really cool. Just like the way that you taste in a kitchen and the way that you taste for wine, sharing your sort of your experiences that may be a little different but still similar was really cool. So I think just it's just like hearing that, like, maybe someone else approaches wine in a different way than I do, and it just makes you think like, oh, I definitely did not get that in that wine, and that's really cool.
Right. Awesome. That is really cool. And do you recommend that, like, as far as the 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 newbie that is on the block that is starting to get their feet wet? Do you recommend diving into more of the restaurant industry, get as much experience into that if they want to go through more of your studies, or is that something that you'd recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was actually just talking to somebody yesterday who's kind of starting out a little bit in the wine world. And I think like there's not really one path for people per se, but I think that like, it's more just about like discovering for themselves what they like, but also like kind of supporting them along the way and kind of like, I think that the hardest part is just not knowing people when you start out. And so you don't know, like, okay, well, what are all the options? And I think when I started
Right.
working in distribution, I realized, like, oh, that's a job. Oh, that's a job. Like, I didn't know that when I was first
Yeah.
starting. Yeah. So I think it's just about, like, kind of letting people know what are the different roles, like from a sales side. Like, if you really want to go into sales or distribution, or you want to work for a supplier, like what do those jobs look like, and how do you
Right.
need to sort of like work your way up the ranks.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, from a restaurant side too, I think I graduated college and I had the naive idea that I would just like waltz into a wine job. um, and that is not how it works. First you
Yeah.
have to be sort of, like bus tables and then serve tables, and maybe help out in the cellar, and maybe be an assistant sommelier and kind of work your way up in that way to a certain extent. I mean, sometimes you are just like you luck into a really incredible role or someone hands it to you. But I would
Right.
say for most people, it is about just like, kind of knowing like what are the steps or what are the different options. So, I think just in general, I think when you're first starting out, it's hard to know what there is. And I think that for me anyway, I just thought like, oh, I just work in restaurants. Like that was the only
Right.
sort of option. So,
Right. And that's good. That's good to know because a lot of times you think, oh, okay, well, if I'm applying, if I want to be a sommelier, I could just go apply for a sommelier. But a lot of times you have to start from the bottom, get your
right.
feet wet and experience things, and work your way through um, the steps and the
Yeah.
process, and then, like you said, become an assistant and so forth. And that's really great to know because I don't think a lot of people really know. Hey, if I were just to do this, I think I could just get into it and it's all start them from here. But
I
that is
know.
great. That's a great point to highlight there. Um, and as far as like, do you see that? Do you see a lot of those people that are at the beginning or the middle, like joining your school? What do you see as far as your clientele in your school?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would say for each of the different classes, there can be a very different clientele. So like Sake Sommelier Association tends to be people who have like been sort of following Sake Sommelier Association, really like, appreciate what they do, and then kind of find my school through them and really want to, get this certification. I think WSET, it's sort of similar where it's, people who want to pursue a certain certification. And then the classes that I offer that I've developed myself, like Wine 101 or Sake 101, those kind of things, Beer 101, tasting wines like a sommelier, those classes tend to be consumer. Um, almost across the board. And, they're people who don't necessarily know anything about wine, but want kind of like a fun way to spend, an evening. I would say the deep dive into wine classes, it's more people who want specific information about a certain region.
Mm-hmm.
And it does tend to be some people who know something about wine, some people who just, also want to learn a little bit more. And then the kind of community building events, those are basically exclusively industry. Not that I exclude anyone,
Right.
but I would say actually the LGBTQ brunch, we have had some people join who are, completely new or just kind of looking to join, which is
Right.
really cool because I get to connect with people who've been in the industry for 20, 30 years, kind of connecting people and resources and things like that. So I would say it really sort of ranges based on what the topic is and what
Right.
people sort of want from it as well. Like, do you want education or like collaboration with other people in the industry, or do you want a certification, or do you want,
Yeah.
just sort of a fun evening? So yeah, just it kind of just depends on what they're looking for.
And I love the amount that you offer, the whole selection. You have your wine set 1 and 2, you have your spirits, and then you have your sake. Then you have your 101 classes. The one thing that was really cool though was that I was really impressed with, and again, it's something that is a continuous movement is your LGBTQ brunches. I love hearing that, and I was so excited to see that. And I think it's important. Again, we are. I said it this morning on my conversation this morning is we've been so isolated from seeing things in the industry, and it's kind of frustrating, especially if you've been in the industry for so long and you're going like, why didn't I know this 10,
Yeah.
15 years ago? It is that frustrating, especially to me, especially raising a 3-year-old, and I see things and I go, I want things better for him. If I could do something, or if the people around me, or if I could support the system that's
Yeah.
doing something about it, we need to do it. And it's like I said, it's such a beautiful thing that you do this. Can you go into a little bit more detail on this? I love what you're doing with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was just kind of like an idea that I had that I wanted to do some sort of gathering for LGBTQ wine professionals, and I just didn't really know exactly how that would look, and so I toyed with different ideas, but ultimately I just figured gathering on a Sunday afternoon and chatting would be really awesome. So I was just kind of thinking, what would I have wanted when I was first starting out in the industry? And I think ultimately I was kind of thinking, like, as a queer person starting in the industry, I didn't necessarily see that many out queer people, or
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of a thing that it felt like like you couldn't really talk about, and I think it was really important for me to figure out, like, okay, what restaurants will be kind of safe and friendly to bring a partner who might be trans, or be kind of visibly queer and things like that. And I think
Right.
that it's also just kind of thinking about my friends who've had really bad experiences at restaurants where maybe the server comes to the table and says, "Welcome, ladies," and one of them is transgender and is not a
Yeah.
lady,
Right.
or is non-binary,
Mm.
and doesn't fit into this lady greeting. And so I
Yeah.
just figured, giving people a place to kind of talk about what some of the issues were could be really valuable. So, and it really has been. So we've done 3 so far, and it's been really incredible. So just connecting with LGBTQ wine people across the country, a couple international people,
Great.
and yeah, it's been really just amazing. And I think one thing that I keep hearing is just, like, I didn't really know that there were like that many queer winemakers, or trans winemakers, or just queer or trans people in the industry as a whole.
Right.
um, and so just giving people the chance to kind of like tell their stories, talk to each other, ask for any help that they need to, has just been really cool.
Yeah. No. Like I said, I think again, it's an area where we've kind of we know things, but we don't go into it, or it's been pushed aside.
Yeah.
And like you said, if you have people that have experienced false, like these negative situations,
Yeah.
it's important to embrace it, and it's important to celebrate these individuals, because it's everybody is equal, and I just this again, for me, it always hits home now even more when I see my own son, and I think, man, I hope
Mm-hmm.
nobody gives him that, or looks at him that way, or treats him this way,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's just hard. And again, this is something that we really need to push forward and knock down these walls and barriers from the women, the LGBTQ, the rest of the minority industry. I think if we all embraced it and celebrated, I think there would be more. We would hear more of it. It would be a regular thing. It wouldn't be a surprising thing.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is, I love it, because I say it. It's important. If you are in the industry and you are doing the work, you're rolling up your sleeves, and you're doing so much great work. And this is, I can't say enough about that. So I really appreciate that. That is very important. And I
Thank you.
just see that you're a huge activist in general, from everything that you post, a lot of things that you post. And again, that's another thing that I sincerely celebrate to you. You're doing some awesome work. Now,
Thank you.
I want to talk about, I think a lot of people in the industry that have gotten their feet wet have watched the movie Psalm, especially Psalm 1, when they saw all these guys go through trying to get their master sommelier certification. And I actually got some of my instruction from the court, And that's one thing I was like really excited about to talk with you about. And then I saw where you were at, and I was like, whoa, okay, I gotta get some more information. But you are an advanced sommelier. You are right there, right at the gate of being a master. And for those that don't know what masters do, it's like you're the Bible. You have the education, you have the knowledge. Can you tell us about your process, what you did, especially being a female going through the courts and getting to this level, and what your next steps are?
Sorry. Oh, I just lost. Oh, can you see
Uh,
me? Oh, can you see me?
yeah, I got you.
Okay, cool.
You're
Sorry
there.
about that.
You're good.
Yeah,
You're good.
okay, so, um, I mean, basically, I started going down the path of like Court of Master Sommelier certification in like 2011. So I did my intro and certified, and decided to start studying for advanced after that. I kind of also thought that I would just move through it much quicker, and it did not go that way. It took me four
Right.
times to pass the advanced. And I think that the process of going through it too, like it was great in some ways. It definitely gave me something to really work for, and I need that kind of structure and motivation for myself to just kind of keep pushing, keep studying. And I think too, part of it was a lesson in confidence that I didn't really have at first. I did not have confidence in my knowledge, and I think that um, really made me struggle in certain ways to kind of bring out the knowledge at an exam when I was too nervous to really do that. And I think I just had to sort of one day just like believe in myself so that I could actually pass the exam. And I think too, it was also just starting to see results. So like going for competitions and starting to win competitions and just feel like, oh, I actually maybe know some things at this point.
Yeah.
And, people can tell you, you know, how much but like you have to kind of believe it for yourself to have that confidence and all of
Yeah.
that. Um, so yeah, so I think it was a process of just kind of like believing in myself. And ultimately, I passed the advanced in 2016. I was signed up to take the master this past year, but it was moved. And then also, in kind of looking back, I just have just really reflected on the exam itself and just how much I think that the exam has some bias throughout the exam, but I think especially in service.
Hmm.
Reflecting back, it took me like 7 years to realize that I was actually sexually harassed during the service exam. Um, and like to name it as sexual harassment too, it took me all that time to be like, oh, that is really inappropriate to
Yeah.
uh, to say. And just putting myself in that person's shoes and asking, would I ever say that? Like, absolutely not. And
Right.
I think that part of the process for me is just going like, oh, like these are things that are normalized in our industry that they should not be normalized. And just kind of saying like, nah, like that it's not gonna keep going like that. So
Right.
basically, I basically decided to stop pursuing the Master Sommelier exam, uh, at least for now. I don't know. I will kind of continue to watch and see what changes they implement. And, I have seen some good changes, but I think at this point I'm still not comfortable walking into
Right.
that exam and believing that it will be a fair exam for everyone. And,
Yeah.
frankly, I think you see it in the pass rate. You see that it is mostly male, mostly white,
Right. Yeah.
mostly, yeah. So, um, yeah, I think that for me, it's been sort of like recognizing that being an advanced sommelier absolutely opened doors for me, gives
Yeah.
me sort of legitimacy, I suppose, in the industry and
Right.
other certifications. But at the same time that like it's not everything, and that, you
Right.
know, there's a lot that you can learn on your own, or that you can kind of achieve without these certifications. And not to say that anyone who's going through it is wrong for doing that. Like I absolutely
Right.
support, you know, any of my friends who choose to
Right.
continue. But I support them more as people and as friends rather than, you know,
Right.
I don't, yeah.
And just experiencing that, you just hit on something because there's just been this battle of the word sommelier, and you're talking about you know you embrace everything, but the one thing that I always think about is that if people have not just if they have partial instruction, or if they're not working on the restaurant floor and they're working in the wine aisles,
Yeah.
or doing being a merchandiser or a buyer. Do you support that word when when some people say, well, I don't know if I should call myself a sommelier? And then sometimes I hear, yeah. And I actually had somebody that came out of the certification, and he goes, you're a sommelier if you are selling, if you're doing the work, if you're rolling up your sleeves. And so that was the first time I heard this informal approach to it, and this interpretation to it. So what is your view on that?
I think so. When I was first starting, I think I was very much one of those people who was just like, "Oh no, you're only a sommelier if you're, you know, certified or whatever." And you know, I think that that is such a limited way to look at what a sommelier is.
Right.
You know, I think since then I've very much realized that, you know, being a sommelier is more of a sure, like it is a job title. You
Right.
know, if you have a job title of a sommelier in a restaurant, you know, serving wine to customers, then you are a sommelier. But also, you know, I think something that I've realized when I moved from being on the floor as a restaurant sommelier to a sales role is that I was still looked at as a sommelier. So, like at,
Sommelier.
you know,
Yeah.
the distribution or distributors that I worked for, I was very much referred to as like, oh, we're so happy to have a sommelier on staff, or like a sommelier
Right.
as, you know, a salesperson. And I think partially it was because I was still going down the certification path. I was still in all of these study groups. But
Right.
also I think that it's kind of on the one hand, that's kind of a sommelier community, even if you don't have a
Right.
sommelier job.
Right.
But I think also it's like, yeah, it's not limited to just working on the
Work
floor
in the restaurant
of a
floor.
restaurant.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like it, you know, I think I would still call myself a sommelier now that I'm an educator.
Right.
I'm not selling wine to anyone. But at the same time, you know, I approach it from sort of a sommelier standpoint. And I kind of educate based on the things that I've learned in a restaurant, the things that I've learned through certification, and
Right.
just kind of my own experiences too. So yeah.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. Again, like I had somebody say certain, almost the same thing. They brought this this conversation in when I was working. I was actually in a position where I was a wine steward on this sales floor, and he goes, your education and your experience, what you've done is the sommelier. And he gave me a title as the sommelier. And so everybody knew me as this is the store sommelier, and it was really interesting.
Yeah.
But I was like, I hear so many different takes, and somebody that is so deep into the industry, I wanted to get that. And I really appreciate those answers. It was so good. I love it. I love
Great.
it. But one of the other things besides your being an advanced sommelier is I saw that you won a couple of youth competitions as a sommelier.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that? I mean, what was the what it was the test? What did you have to do? I mean, that sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So a few years. So I did the Chaîne de Young Sommelier competition for a few years. So the way that that happens is there's first an online exam, and it's just a ton of questions that are, all over the world. What's the subregion of this, or what's the main grape of this region, or what's the aging requirement of whatever. And it's just a ton of questions in a timed online test. And then the top scores from each region will then proceed to the regional competition. So at the regional competition, there is, I think it was 3 people every year. So for the Midwest one, there were people from Chicago, from Missouri, from Michigan, and so at the that one, it would be tasting and service, and I think they used your theory score from the online round. So then you would do tasting of 6 wines blind, so just like the court. And then you would also do a mock service. So they would set up a table, and there would be some Shen members, and maybe a master sommelier, or maybe a master of wine. And you would have to go around and mimic service for them. And then the top score from that would then go to nationals. So the national competition, I think it was usually in California. So I got to go twice to the national one, which is fun.
Right.
Yeah, and so that was people, from all over the U.S. And it was just a really awesome time to
Yeah.
just meet some really cool sommeliers from all over that I wouldn't have met
Yeah.
otherwise. And yeah, and that was similar. So it was a theory test, a tasting, and a service portion. So yeah, so that was the Shen Young Sommelier. And then there was Top Som from a few years ago. That hasn't really happened in a while, but Top Som was an online competition that was timed just like the Shen. So it was very similar to that. Maybe some label recognition too. So it would be the label, but with, the producer crossed out, and you'd have to recognize who it was based on, like a fox on the label or something.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. That is incredible. Again, all the accolades, your background, your resume is huge, and it's it's interesting because again, you're digging these gems out of the rough, and you're really highlighting it and really celebrating it. And this is something that I wish I knew. Again, I wish I knew more of. You're doing what you've done in the industry is amazing. And I wanted to touch on something before I give you another question. But the question I wanted to ask you was, I know you have your advanced Cordis Master Sommelier, and you're doing your WSET. So can you tell the viewer what the real difference is between the two?
Yeah, so I actually had not gone down the WSET path before, and now that I'm going down it, I think I wish that I had started it when I had just entered the wine industry. It's a lot more, there's no service part. So it's much more like, a timed multiple choice exam for the first couple of levels, and then the third level has a tasting portion, and then the diploma level, which is what I'm going through right now, has it's basically broken into 6 parts, and it takes about 2 years, maybe year and a half.
Wow.
Maybe 2 years to get through it all. So there,
Wow.
I just did the viticulture and enology part. I'm starting the business of wine part, and then there are other things like sparkling wine and fortified wine, and then wines of the world, and then you have to write a paper as well. So WSET, I would say, is much more, I don't want to say the word academic, but it's kind of more, a little more academic.
Theory?
It's more, it's more theory. The tasting grid is a little bit different because you write it all out compared to the court where you say it out loud. So,
Right.
I mean, I guess for certified, you do, write it out. But It is just a little bit different in terms of, how each method is structured. Um, but I would say quartermaster sommeliers is much more sort of service
Service.
oriented, I suppose, um, with tasting in theory, whereas WSET has been much more sort of, yeah, it's kind of theory. And also, I think a big difference too is WSET also has what they call a specification. So it's like, this is
Right.
what you need to know. And as you're going through it, you're supposed to refer back to that to be like, oh, for my exam, I need to know this, this, and this.
Right.
Whereas for the quartermaster sommeliers, it's all like kind of self-directed. And so
Right.
you just kind of need to know wine, all of it.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
it's really interesting because the more people that I've gotten connected with, they are really going toward that WSET area.
yeah,
They all have their level ones. They're going into their level ones, going into their twos and threes, and it's really interesting. I'm like, wow, this is an area that a lot more people are going to because I feel maybe it's not so servicey, and they feel like, hey, I could. Does it seem like going into this area too, you have more opportunity with career wise?
I think, yeah, I think that WSET, um, it's kind of a little bit of a sort of broader, I think, maybe range of people that I'm seeing in my classes or, just classes in general, like people who are from the sales side or restaurant side or education or things like that. So, sort of a wider range of the industry. I think there are also a lot of people just like me who have decided to stop pursuing the court and are like, well, what else is there? And went
Yeah,
to
yeah,
WSET. And I think with WSET, one thing that is also kind of pretty different is that you write out your exam and then it's sent off to I think it's sent off to London, and
okay,
then yeah, and so it's like someone else doing it, like someone else grading it, and I
well,
think that's
okay,
one thing that's pretty different with the court, where it's the people who are in your room are grading you.
right, right,
So it's just kind of different in that way.
right.
But also, yeah,
All right, I love it. I love it. I'm getting a lot more information. This is great. And one of the things, like, because I've been like so excited talking with you, and so many like little subjects. I'm like, okay, I can talk to this I can talk to Miranda about this, and this. But one of the things that I wanted to really touch on, and you brought it in, especially with the courts, what, as far as what do you feel needs to be done more with the minority and the women in the industry, as far as how you're looked at, how you're accepted, how you're supported, how you're celebrated? Um, where do you like to see go from? Where would you like to see that go?
yeah, that's a great question, and it's a work in progress, I think, for me and
Right.
for everyone.
Yeah.
But one thing I think I just attended the Lift Collective conference, virtual conference, and I think one thing that I really appreciated that they did is they started it out with a code of conduct, and they said, this is what we expect from our attendees and from ourselves, and that no harassment, no abuse, no inappropriate behavior or words will be tolerated. And I think just setting that as like the baseline is
Yeah.
is important, and I think that um, just when you also really strive to be inclusive and equitable from the outset, then you don't have to backtrack and be like, oh no, we made a mistake, or oh no, we have to
Right.
fix this thing. I think that if you're sort of going into it with the mindset of like, okay, like how many more people can we include? How many more people can we um, embrace and say, like, you don't have to fit into this box. I think that that's what I hear from a lot of friends is, I felt like there was no place for me as a wine professional, as like, I can't be a Black sommelier, or I can't be a queer sommelier, or, you have to kind of fit into a box. And I think just making people feel supported and, encouraged to be their full authentic self and not try to fit into something that is impossible for them to fit into.
Yeah, that's really it's really kind of that negative part, that discouraging part of it. Now, do you see any positive? Do you see any light coming into it? Do you see more people, more ambassadors, more organizations going, this is what we need to do now if we want to open doors? Do you
Yeah,
see more of that
totally.
happening?
Yeah. So just off the top of my head, the Hue Society has been doing incredible work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lift Collective has been awesome. Diversity in, what is it? Diversity in Wine Form. It's Miriam Ahmed and Elaine Dugan Brown's organization. And yeah, a few other really amazing organizations too. But I think that, also industry sessions. They're also doing some really awesome tastings too. So, I think that I think that there are so many organizations. I think that one thing that I am kind of starting to think about is like, okay, how do we bridge the gap to the people who need to hear the information? And that's something that comes up in the LGBTQ sessions too, where it's like a place to
Yeah.
support each other, but also how
Yeah.
can we then talk to people outside of the LGBTQ community and say like, hey, like, I was talking to someone today about like, how can we ask for pronouns in a way that is good and supportive and inclusive, rather than like, I don't know, we threw it on here and it sounds really bad, and so like, and I think that, that's something I think that comes up too, where there are ways that I think it becomes clear that you are at least trying to put in the work and you're trying to, continue to improve and do better, rather than like, do nothing. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I think that I think there is absolutely a lot of light in this industry.
Yeah.
I think even amongst some, big issues, I think that there are some people doing really, really incredible things.
Yeah, I've noticed that organizations, more organizations opening up and really highlighting things, and even being a Latino male and not knowing that there was over 50 Hispanic wineries in Napa and Sonoma that we don't even know about.
Right.
It's like, I was telling my family this. I was talking to one of my brothers, and I was like, this is kind of ridiculous that I've been in the industry as long as I have. And again, I always bring this back, but why don't we know about these? Why aren't Wines from Mexico put in, more books? Why aren't we knowing about all these other regions that are producing these wines? Why don't we hear about this? Why don't we know about these women producers? I mean, I'm still in the dark with a lot of that, and I really enjoy learning, because I feel like this is only going to make things better if I learn, because that's going to make me a stronger ambassador to support it. But it's just another thing where we got to go, man, this has got to like, and I just feel like it has to, especially in the retail elements. And I have this idea that what I've seen, and I ask about certain products and I look for certain things, and they're oblivious, or it's almost the answer is, well, I don't know. It's like, well, find out. This is your job.
Yeah.
Find out about it and get it done. Because if you're supposed to be doing the work, roll up your sleeves and get it done. This is what we need to do. And
Yeah.
it's a continuous push for people like us, like yourself, doing the work, rolling up your sleeves and doing the work when there's other people out there that have more access and they don't need to roll up their sleeves as much, and they should be able to go, we could do this. There's no question we could do this. I don't accept the word, oh, I can't do it anymore, or I don't know, because you do know. And that's the important thing. You know what I mean? We're
Yeah.
smarter than that. And I think it's been great that, it was a negative thing that we went into lockdown, but I think for a lot of people like yourself, you had this negative because you were laid off, but you started your school and you
Hmm.
found a positive and you learned to you're giving something of yourself. And it's like for many of us, we are trying to find positive outlets and we're starting to see things and we're going, no, this is, you can't be the odds behind the curtain anymore. You gotta show
Yeah.
it now. Show us it.
Yeah.
Lay it
And
all out there.
I think too, like I'm definitely hearing that from a lot of people with COVID and with the protests this past summer and
Um,
with the New York Times article in November. I think that, out of these like really, really terrible situations, people are having, the moment of stepping back, reflecting on like what's wrong in the industry, but also like how do we move forward? How do we make it better? And I think that that's what I'm most interested in is not like kind of, I don't know, just like yes, I want to talk about the issues. I want to bring them up. I want to make sure that we're actually really understanding what the issue is, but also part of the focus in my community building events is like how do we move forward, how do we make it
right,
better, like what can we
right,
do to make it a safer place for women, for BIPOC wine people, for LGBTQ wine people, and like that's kind of a more active um,
yeah,
thing that we have to do. Um,
absolutely,
but based on those conversations, I think those conversations are really important. But yeah, I think that we also kind of have to be in sort of next step mode, and for everyone, just kind of looking at your own businesses, looking at your own companies, and saying like, okay, how are these maybe exclusive, or what am I doing to make a safer space for everyone? What am I
right,
doing to make a more equitable, inclusive space? And if I'm not, then how can I start?
right, exactly. That's it. I love that. I dig that. So I know we're getting close to the end of our conversation, and I can't say enough. Just as far as thank you for just your time and considering sitting down and breaking bread with me, talking. I really appreciate it. And as I tell all the ambassadors that I talk with, we got to stay connected. I love to help in any way I can, communicate, stay in communication. Um, you know, this is all about community. It's about support, and we need to continue that. Um, I wanted to ask you on the lighter side, what is your favorite wine pairing? What do you dig? What do you do on your favorite, like your Friday night, your Saturday night? What is your favorite go-to pairing?
Um, well, I would say, kind of going back to my family. Actually, I have a story for you. So, my dad actually followed a woman to the Rhone Valley when he was in college. He was like 21, and she ditched him. So he spent 2 weeks just drinking Rhone wines because
Uh,
it's like
Love
cheaper
it.
than Pepsi.
Yeah.
So since then, that is his wine. So he drinks Rhone wines.
Oh
So I
yeah.
grew up having a little taste of his wine, and it was always Rhone. So Rhone is kind of my go-to in general.
Right.
I love Syrah. He's more of a Southern Rhone kind of guy, but I'll drink it all.
Yeah.
So I would
Oh yeah.
say my like Friday night would be, a Cote de Rhone, or,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, a little bit nicer, like a Gigondas or something like that,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like a Sato Saf or Crow's Hermitage, or if it's a
Yeah.
nice night, like a Cote Roti.
Yeah.
So I'm a big Rhone fan. And
Very
like,
nice.
yeah. pairings with like lamb. It's, an easy go-to, but it's delicious.
Yeah, that was, that I feel that we're kindreds right there because that pivotal moment for me wanting to get into the wine industry was a Baccarat.
Okay. Yeah.
And um, I was I just grabbed a bottle from work. I was working for Trader Joe's at the time, and Trader Joe's had some dark chocolates with habanero peppers in it, dark chocolate,
Mhm.
and that's Rhone was my first go-to, and it's been always my go-to. Since then, I love Rhone. I love it all.
Yeah.
I love the southern and northern areas, but I always think about that, and I always tell people always tell me, "What? How do you find a good wine?" I'm like, man, if I drink a wine and it takes me back to that spot when I had my first that pivotal moment, that's my one right there. That's the one I dig. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate that
Yeah.
wine pairing and that you're digging Rhone. Now, um, like I said, now we're getting toward the end. I wanted to ask you because again, for me, my vision is to really celebrate celebrate the industry, the minority driven industry, the women industry. That is, I call it the true blood that pumps the heart to this industry. The one we see it, we hear it, but we don't really acknowledge it. You're the true blood, and one of the most important questions I like to ask is, what advice would you give to the female or the LGBTQ or the Hispanic, the Black, the Indigenous ambassador that is getting into this industry that has gotten negative pushes or that is in the middle and is seeing things like that or in the crossroads? What advice would you tell
Um, I would say, and this is maybe easier said than done, but I would just say stay true to yourself and stay true to um, who you want to be in the industry. Don't, sometimes there is a pressure to, not, uh, not be your full authentic self. And, that can be culturally, that can be as a woman, that can be as, a queer person. But I think that what I've found for myself is when I have given myself the right to just exist and be confident and kind of just stay true to who I am and what I believe in, then at least I feel better about it. I don't feel like I'm trying to fit into a box I can't fit into. I'm not trying to I don't know. I think I'm not sort of working for someone else's goal that I don't necessarily believe in. I'm sort of working for uh, moving the industry forward and moving myself forward and all of us forward.
right? Words well spoken. I love it. And where can we find your information? Where can we get in touch with you at if viewers interested in doing the W sets or taking your 101 or your sake or even joining you for the LGBTQ the brunch?
Yeah, so go to elliottwineschool.com. So Elliot is two L's, one T. And so find me at elliottwineschool.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Elliot Wine School or here at Some Elliot, SOMMELLIOT. But yeah, just kind of stay tuned. I have some fun things coming up. I have an event with my friend who's going to talk about employment discrimination, and he's an attorney, so he's going to talk about like the legal aspects of that. So that's coming up. LGBTQ wine brunch, WSET, sake sommelier, a little bit of everything. So
That is so awesome. I love it. I love it. And you do replays on YouTube, correct? You have the replays, the recorded replays on YouTube.
I do. So I some of them I do and some of them I don't. So like LGBTQ wine brunch, I say from the outset, like I'm not gonna
Right.
record it, no recording allowed, just to
Right.
create a safe space. But for things like that, interrogating wine or interrogating professionalism in wine, that I did put up on the YouTube.
I was gonna say we're closing out in 10 seconds. I'm so sorry.
Okay, no worries. Thank you so much.
But thank you so much, Miranda. Bye, Miranda.